Hi, everybody. Karen Roby here for Tech Republic and ZDNet, talking today about machine learning, which, of course, we talk about all of the time, but very rarely do we talk about machine learning and its impact on professional sports. And that's why I'm really excited here today to be joined by Jeremy Rod and Zane McPhee. Zane is the analyst in baseball research for the Minnesota Twins, Jeremy, director of baseball systems. Guys, thanks for being here with me today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
So Jeremy, this is, like I mentioned, this is not the typical industry that we think about machine learning, really being entrenched in, but we're hearing a little bit more about it. And that's why I'm really intrigued by this. Just start a little bit about, with the Twins, how you guys have been introduced to machine learning and really what it's being used for.
Yeah. Typically, you don't think about pro sports as much in the big data and this type of machine learning, but it's becoming more and more prevalent as the amount of data has increased. Just in the last couple of years alone, it's grown exponentially with the amount of sensors and the amount of data just coming in from various sources. So now we can attach sensors, to bats. We have video. We have all sorts of things going on now that's tracking so much more at a granular level what's happening in the game of baseball, which really allows us to start teasing out the luck component and trying to determine what is the true talent of the player that we're evaluating.
That's really fascinating. And, obviously, Zane, humans, we can't always be, from day to day, our behavior isn't always, you can't pinpoint how we're going to be or act or feel. So talk a little bit about specifically how the machine learning is helping you all by attaching sensors to bats and that type of thing. How is it helping you narrow down the information you need to know?
Yeah, great question. Going back, 10 years, all the information that you could ever imagine ever getting from a baseball game was in a box score. How many singles a player got, how many strikeouts they got, how many walks. And just kind of over the last 10 years and going into this new decade, we've seen just kind of a birth of metrics available to us as analysts in our player evaluation quest. Like Jeremy was mentioning, bat sensors, StatCast at the MLB level is very popular. You'll see that on telecasts all the time. All that player tracking and pitch tracking information. As that data gets bigger and the questions that it can answer get more derivative, you can start asking questions about the outcomes or the drivers of the outcomes of, plate appearances or pitches, and start answering questions like why that pitch was good, based on its movement or velocity. Our reliance on machine learning at that point, as the data gets bigger and the questions get deeper and more interrelated, our reliance on machine learning techniques is going to increase. And as we look kind of towards the future, it's not like we're going to get less data in the future. We're going to get more and more. And we kind of see this as a place where, building an infrastructure early on here will set us up very well down the line to kind of turn that information into actionable decisions as quick as possible.
And is there any way, Zane, to put into perspective, like you said, of course, just the information that you used to have at hand and how long that would take to compile that information? Is there any way to say a time savings possibly that's involved here by using machine learning?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you were to go to a website like Fangraphs, which is kind of the one of the more prominent public baseball researchy websites, you'll kind of see a couple of projection systems that are based exclusively currently on box scores. And when we were building those in-house, they would take maybe on the high end, like, I don't know, an hour to run front to back, just because there's not much data on every player. And now kind of when we start doing research on this pitch level and player tracking information that's available to us, the simulations and models we want to run are more complex. We want to simulate them a lot more. We want to be able to manipulate them in real time. And so, kind of without machine learning techniques or, kind of some more data infrastructure techniques that we're using, those models would take days or weeks to run. And kind of in this landscape, information needs to be actionable as soon as possible. And so, running a model and waiting a week for a response is not really going to help our decision makers make quick, timely, and responsible decisions.
Yeah, and when you take on something like or look to invest in programs like this, and anytime with technology, of course, there's competing vendors and there's so many different avenues you can take here. Jeremy, talk a little bit about how you went about making the decision to move forward with a program, with a plan here, and vendor selection, that type of thing. How difficult was it? Some of the roadblocks that you ran into?
Yeah, for the last couple of years, we were attempting to do a lot of the stuff on our own, kind of stringing different technologies together, step by step, building out a lot of the server infrastructure in the cloud ourselves, wiring things together, the communication. It became too much for our small team to handle. We don't have that many people on our team. And so we were looking for resources that could help us get to the next level without taking as much human resources. And so over the last year or so, we started investigating different platforms. One of the ones that we landed on was Databricks as our way of being able to process and handle this amount of data that we want to do and be able to do it in real time. That was one of the considerations we want, as we are now getting these metrics in real time within seconds after they happen on the field. We want to make that actionable. So Databricks came to our attention because of their deep integration in the Microsoft ecosystem, which the Twins have had a long-standing relationship with. We did investigate some other platforms as well, but what we really found that was helpful in Databricks that set them apart is just beyond like the machine learning and the actual compute power that it could have using Spark. They had this whole ecosystem around it. Like, how do you manage your models? How do you do the DevOps? How do you enable your analysts to be more productive, to be able to share code, to be able to test their models and have all those runs tracked? And so they just had that whole rich ecosystem that we could dive into. Since we have a limited number on our team, we could lean heavily on that to coordinate a lot of the efforts instead of having people try to wire those things up ourselves.
Gotcha. And Zane, sometimes when we talk about data, of course, often referred to as the new oil of the digital economy, because there's just so much information that can be at your fingertips. Is it sometimes a little bit overwhelming? Is it sometimes, do you feel like you can analyze too much, and do you ever feel that way? Just curious.
Oh yeah, but that's a motivating factor. I think the digger you deep, or the deeper you dig even into the data world, the deeper the hole is, and that's a really motivating factor, I think, for kind of our research team. Is we're driven by the deeper and deeper questions that you can answer and kind of the deeper understanding you can make. The one thing I would add to that is there's a lot of data at our disposal, and it's in a lot of ways really hard to know how to weigh that appropriately or to make it actionable. And so I think part of this, work with Microsoft and Databricks has been kind of our decision makers are evidence-based, and our job is to present them with evidence for them to make their decisions on. And so part of the competitive landscape is turning this data into actionable little bite-sized morsels for our decision makers. And when we have all this data at our disposal, it can be very overwhelming. And so kind of integrating Databricks and some practices there has allowed us to streamline that process and hopefully cut through the noise and maybe not over research as much as possible, just because we can do things a lot quicker.
Yeah, most definitely. And again, going back to that idea that, machine learning, typically we don't think of as its involvement in baseball, but just IT in general. With so many companies, it used to be IT was this just department that was off to the side, brought in only when there was, a small network issue, that kind of thing, or when computers go down. But IT obviously has such a big seat at the table now in really every industry, because it's just so woven into the fabric of everything that we do. Do you feel like that's the case here with sports? I mean, with your all's organization too, in general, is IT brought into the conversation much more, do you see now, than ever before?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's one thing that gives the Twins a competitive advantage over some other teams in other sporting venues as well, and Major League Baseball, is that we actually integrate the baseball technology and IT. In fact, I'm actually on the IT team and on the baseball team. And so we have really deep crossover between us. So we can use the expertise of IT the years of experience doing networking and server administration with a lot of the baseball technology. And that has given us a huge competitive advantage to be able to move really fast and make really good decisions.
Yeah, that crossover, it's so important, and great too that you know can sit with both to help merge you know the different facets of your organization. Well, guys, as we're closing out here, let me just ask you, how do you, if somebody would say to you, well, you know, baseball and a player's performance, they're going to do what they're going to do. Tell me how, in closing here, you feel like machine learning is an advantage for you guys, kind of in a nutshell, and what sets you apart potentially from other teams, especially looking down the road.
Yeah, in my opinion, machine learning allows us to tackle this mountain of data to answer these questions that we've always asked in our head for like the last 20 years. We've been asking these questions. We can finally, we feel like, answer these. Machine learning gives us the tools, and the platforms that we're using right now allow us to get those even faster. So that not only is the data increasing, but our speed at able to get the data in-house is increasing. In fact, we can get it within seconds of the play happening. So being able to react so much quicker, machine learning gives us that advantage that that we feel like we have an advantage over other teams.
And Zane, I'm sure you would echo those exact thoughts. But as an analyst too in baseball, I'm guessing, I mean, probably in your sleep, right? You're like thinking of players and how they're batting, what they're doing, how they're feeling. So this certainly has to be a huge help to you personally.
Yeah, I think, you know, when you track the level of information in our data sources as an analyst, you know, the questions you could answer were very straightforward at the very beginning. You know, basically how good you would be in the future as a player would be a function of your past performance. And now by getting kind of more and more derivative of kind of these processes that lead to outcomes, whether it be, you know, Jeremy was mentioning swing characteristics and bat sensors, or, you know, pitch level information. And, you know, I think the industry in general is moving more towards biomechanics as well. The more derivative you get, the less clear the questions or the reasons why an outcome is happening is clear. And so machine learning is going to help kind of cut through some of that noise where, you know, maybe 10 years ago, I knew all the questions that I needed to ask, and machine learning is kind of helping us maintain relevant in our curiosity and kind of cut through some of that noise.
Yeah, it's like the golden age of being a baseball nerd right now. It's so much fun. And so, yeah, it's a great time for people getting into machine learning and things. There's so much data coming, and it's growing. As we start the future, we see with biomechanics and being able to track every ligament and movement and strain. And there's so much more data that we see that's coming down the pipe, that this is just going to become an arms race in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely not our granddad's baseball, right? I mean, the times have changed, and it's really, I think to some people too, even people, you know, that are very familiar with tech and how all of this works. Again, it's really interesting to see how it's moving and making its way into sports. Again, an industry that people never really saw it coming, maybe.
Yep, for sure. Yep, it's a fun era to be in, for sure.
I'd say so. All right, gentlemen, I appreciate you being with me here today, Jeremy and Zane, again with the Minnesota Twins. And for much more on machine learning, make sure you check out Tech Republic and ZDNet. Thanks so much for watching today.